When it comes to exploring the boundaries of consciousness, reality, and information, a handful of thought experiments stand out as lightning rods for curiosity and debate. These are not mere philosophical puzzles. They invite us to question the nature of our own minds, the reliability of our senses, and even the ethical dimensions of what we know and share. Let's take a deep, practical journey into 7 of the most intriguing concepts. Swampman, Wigner's friend, brain in a vat, infinite library, Burke's teleportation, the Cheshire Cat experiment, and information hazard. Imagine yourself standing at the edge of a vast, unknowable swamp. The air is thick, alive with possibility. You take a step forward, and suddenly, a bolt of lightning strikes a nearby tree. In an instant, the energy rearranges molecules, and out of the swamp rises an exact replica of you, right down to your memories, quirks, and scars. This is the heart of the Swampman thought experiment. The Swampman, despite being physically and functionally identical to you, has no causal history, no childhood, no experiences, no stories. Yet if you encountered your swamp twin, would you consider them to be you? Does identity hinge on physical makeup alone, or does it require history and continuity? The Swampman concept pushes us to examine the roots of personal identity. Imagine walking into a room and seeing yourself standing there, holding a coffee mug just as you do every morning. You know rationally that this person shares every atom and every memory, but you also know they didn't live your life. The practical lesson here is about how we define self. It's not just about what we are, but the path we've taken to get there. Applying this to social skills. When building rapport, it's not enough to mirror someone's surface behaviors. You need shared experiences and genuine connection. The Swampman is a reminder that authenticity grows from history, not just imitation. Now shift your perspective from the swamp to a quantum laboratory. Here the Wigner's friend scenario unfolds. Picture Wigner, a physicist, observing his friend who is watching a quantum experiment, a particle measured to be either in state A or state B. To the friend, after the measurement, the result is clear. It's A, let's say. But for Wigner, who stands outside the room, the entire system, including his friend and the experiment, is still in a superposition, a haze of possibilities. When Wigner finally opens the door and asks his friend what happened, reality collapses for him at that moment. This idea stretches our understanding of observation and reality. In practical terms, think about a group conversation where 2 people recall an event differently. For each, their memory is definite, but for a third party who wasn't there, the truth remains ambiguous until both sides are heard. Wigner's friend teaches us that perspective shapes reality, our own and others. When resolving conflicts or building trust, recognize that others may live in superpositions of truth, waiting for their realities to be acknowledged. It's not just what happened, but when and by whom it's observed. Let's move to another classic, brain in a vat. Imagine for a moment you wake up and discover that your brain is floating in a jar, wired to a supercomputer. This machine feeds you experiences, sights, sounds, tastes, identical to those you'd have in the real world. How could you ever prove that you aren't just a brain in a vat? Every sensation and memory could be an illusion, programmed by something outside your control. The brain in a vat is a challenge to our trust and perception. It's easy to dismiss it as sci-fi, but its lesson is practical. Always question assumptions. In social situations, don't take appearances at face value. What you see and hear may not be the full picture. This is the root of skepticism and also of empathy, recognizing that others' realities may be constructed from different inputs. When you apply this mindset, you become a better listener and a more careful observer, aware that your vat might not be the same as someone else's. Now, step into the infinite library, inspired by Jorge Luis Borges's Library of Babel. Imagine a library with endless corridors and infinite books. Each book contains a unique arrangement of letters, and somewhere in this library are books with the complete story of your life, past, present, and future. But for every true book, there are countless false ones, each differing by a single letter or word. The infinite library is a metaphor for the flood of information in our world. In practical terms, it's like searching for advice online. For every gem, there are thousands of misleading or incorrect sources. The lesson is about discernment. In the age of infinite information, your skill isn't just finding answers, it's filtering out noise. When building influence or fostering connection, you need to curate your library. Share information that is relevant, accurate, and meaningful. Otherwise, you risk getting lost in the stacks, overwhelmed by possibilities and paralyzed by doubt. Burke's teleportation is a twist on the classic teleportation paradox. Imagine you step into a teleportation booth. The machine scans your body, destroys it, and instantly rebuilds you molecule by molecule on the other side of the world. Are you still the same person? Or did the original you die, replaced by a perfect copy? This experiment forces us to confront the boundaries of continuity and selfhood. Here's the practical takeaway. Change and transformation are inevitable. Sometimes, in life, you have to reinvent yourself. Move to a new city, start a new career, leave behind old habits. The question is not whether you're the same after these changes, but whether you carry your values and intentions forward. Burke's teleportation teaches us to embrace transformation, knowing that continuity is what you choose to maintain, not just what persists automatically. Switch now to the Cheshire Cat experiment, a quantum twist on Alice in Wonderland. In certain quantum setups, it's possible for a particle, like a neutron, to be separated from one of its properties, like its spin. The cat and particle goes one way, while its grin property goes another. This bizarre separation challenges our assumptions about identity and location. The Cheshire Cat experiment offers a lesson in subtlety. Sometimes, presence and influence can be separated. You might not be in the room, but your reputation or message still lingers. In social dynamics, your actions can leave lasting impressions, even when you're not physically present. To build lasting influence, think about the grin you leave behind. What qualities, ideas, or emotions persist in others after you're gone? This is the art of indirect impact, the invisible thread that connects you to those you've influenced. Finally, let's talk about information hazard. This concept warns us that some knowledge can be dangerous, not just to the knower, but to everyone. Imagine stumbling upon a secret formula that, if widely known, could cause harm or panic. The mere act of sharing certain information can create risk, even if the intention is benign. Information hazard is a practical reminder. Be mindful about what you share and with whom. In personal and professional life, not all truths need to be spoken. Sometimes, discretion is the better part of wisdom. When you hold influence, your words carry weight. Think carefully about the consequences of sharing sensitive information. Protecting yourself and others sometimes means keeping knowledge secure, or sharing it only with those who can handle it responsibly. Let's bring these concepts together. Each thought experiment invites you to stretch your mind, but also to sharpen your practical skills. Swampman asks you to value history and authenticity. Wigner's friend teaches perspective-taking and the power of observation. Brain in a Vat instills skepticism and empathy for unseen realities. The infinite library urges discernment in the face of overwhelming information. Burke's teleportation inspires resilience and adaptation through change. The Cheshire Cat experiment highlights the lasting effects of subtle influence. Information hazard reminds you to weigh the risks of sharing knowledge. Imagine applying these lessons in everyday life. You walk into a meeting, aware that each person brings their own quantum reality, their own version of events. You listen actively, knowing that truth is sometimes ambiguous. You share your perspective, but also ask questions, seeking shared understanding. When you encounter new information, you ask, is this the real story or just one book in the infinite library? You embrace change, reinventing yourself when needed, confident that your values will carry forward. You build influence not just by being present, but by leaving behind positive impressions, the grin that remains after the cat has vanished. And crucially, you recognize when silence is the best protection, guarding sensitive information that could do harm if mishandled. These concepts aren't just intellectual curiosities, they are practical tools. The next time you're faced with a difficult decision, a conflict, or an opportunity to lead, think back to these thought experiments. Ask yourself, am I acting with authenticity or just mirroring someone else's surface? Am I seeing the whole picture or just one observer's reality? Am I questioning assumptions or taking them for granted? Am I overwhelmed by too much information or focusing on what matters? Am I embracing change or fearing it? Am I leaving a lasting positive influence or fading into the background? Am I sharing knowledge wisely or risking unnecessary harm? The world is complex and certainty is rare. But by exploring these boundaries between mind and body, observer and observed, real and simulated, safe and hazardous, you gain not just insight but actionable wisdom. You learn to connect more deeply, influence more skillfully, navigate information more wisely, and sleep a little smarter tonight. Because in the end, the real magic of these thought experiments lies not in the questions themselves, but in how you use them to live, connect, and grow.